The day my own son handed me a pamphlet for independent living, I realized love wasn't enough to guarantee loyalty. They thought I had nowhere to go, nothing to offer. But thanks to an unexpected inheritance, and the lessons I learned cleaning houses for the wealthy, I found a way to reclaim not just my dignity, but my entire future. When they handed me the pamphlet for assisted living, I sat through dinner with a smile so tight it might have cracked my molars. Nicole, my daughter-in-law, slid the glossy brochure across the table like it was a birthday card. It's called Green Valley Estates. Lovely staff. And Ethan already spoke with them. Her tone was sweet. Too sweet. Across the table, my son Ethan stirred his spaghetti like he was digging a grave. Mine, presumably. I didn't touch my fork. My appetite had vanished somewhere between Susan Beckett's smirk and the word independent. That's what they called it. Independent living. Like it was a badge of honor to be discarded politely. Susan, Nicole's mother, leaned forward, her voice oozing educated condescension. It's a dignified option, Nora. You've had such a long working life. Surely you're ready to transition into rest. Did they really think I didn't see the plan? I'd come home that afternoon expecting warmth, maybe even a hug. I'd lost my job, not by choice, and after 30 years of keeping houses for other people, I just wanted to be with family. I imagined laughter, maybe the smell of roast chicken and the little clatter of forks against plates. Instead, I got eviction papers hidden behind pleasantries. Nicole tapped the pamphlet again, like I hadn't heard. At least you'll still be pulling your weight. I looked over at Ethan, my only son. His jaw was clenched, eyes fixed on his plate like it might offer an escape. Not a word in my defense, not even a glance. My heart simmered. After dinner, I stood in the doorway of the den, watching them from behind the half wall. Nicole curled up on the couch, legs tucked under her, a glass of white wine in hand. Susan was perched on the edge of the armchair like she owned the place. And Ethan, he just sat there, distant, small. I felt like a ghost in my own home. Correction, their home. The deed didn't bear my name, even though the down payment had come from my life savings. I'd wired it over 5 years ago, with a quiet hope that they'd acknowledge the sacrifice one day. They never did. And now, they were nudging me out like expired milk in the fridge. Toss it before it smells. I walked upstairs that night without a word, sat on the edge of the guest bed, my room, and stared at the pale beige walls. My old employer, Catherine Malone, had called them doctor's office walls. Lifeless, sanitized, safe. It was Catherine the First had worked for, lived with, and loved like a mother. The world called her eccentric. I called her brilliant. And when she passed, I lost not just a job. I lost a person who saw me. That night, I opened the old cedar box she'd gifted me on my last birthday. Inside, tucked beneath her lavender-scented scarves, was an envelope. I had never opened it. Not until now. It was addressed in her shaky cursive. For Nora. When they show you who they are, believe them. I read it once, then again. My hands trembled by the end. Inside was a letter from her estate lawyer, Mr. Langston. Catherine had left me everything. Everything. A blind trust valued at over $8 million, shielded by anonymity, distributed quietly through 2 holding companies she set up in my name. You gave me dignity when no one else did, she'd written. Now I return the favor. I sat frozen, staring at the letter. My ears rang. My throat tightened. I wasn't broke. I wasn't dependent. I wasn't anyone's burden. I was free. The next morning, I made them all pancakes. Thick, golden, stacked with butter and syrup, just how Ethan used to like them when he was 7. Susan made a show of declining too many carbs, but Nicole took 2. I didn't say a word about the letter. Let 'em enjoy their meal. Let 'em believe they'd won. Because I had a plan. That afternoon, I packed a small bag and told them I was going to stay with an old friend for a bit. Nicole barely looked up from her phone. Susan nodded approvingly, already plotting where to put her new reading chair. Ethan offered a weak, "Okay, Mom, just let us know if you need anything." I smiled, kissed his cheek. "I won't." I checked into the Fairmont downtown under a different name, reserved the penthouse suite, ordered room service, steak, red wine, a chocolate tart, and ate it barefoot in a white robe while the city sparkled beneath me. And then, I got to work. First call? Mr. Langston. We met over brunch 2 days later. He wore a gray linen suit and had the kind of smile that says, "Let's ruin someone politely." "I want 2 LLCs, I told him. One for anonymity, one for strategy. His eyes lit up. "You're not playing defense." "Not anymore," I said, sipping my coffee. We began acquisitions that same week. Mostly real estate. Quiet little purchases with big shadows. Apartment blocks, corner stores, a plot of land near a luxury retirement village, just to be petty. And yes, that house. The one Ethan and Nicole lived in. The one with the unrecorded lien because of my original down payment. They didn't know that part. They never read the fine print when I wired the funds. But Mr. Langston did. Within a month, I owned it. On paper, a holding company. In reality, me. The day the mortgage company sent their change of lien holder notice, Nicole called Ethan in a panic. I wasn't there, but I imagined the scene clearly. Her pacing barefoot on the hardwood I paid for. Ethan squinting at the letter like it might bite him. They still didn't know I was behind it. Not yet. And oh, that reveal was going to be delicious. But first, I let them squirm. Because what they didn't realize is, I don't need a home anymore. Part of me wanted to march up to that front door right then and there and slam down the deed with a flourish. But no, I wasn't going to waste that kind of reveal on a doorstep argument. I'd waited 58 years to stop being invisible. I could wait a little longer to be unforgettable. So I watched, listened, moved in silence. From my suite at the Fairmont, I tracked every document Ethan and Nicole let slip, every bank notice, every passive-aggressive email about tightening our household budget. Nicole had started forwarding me utility bills again, not directly asking for money. Heavens no, that would have been tacky. No, she framed it as a gentle reminder that shared spaces mean shared responsibilities. Shared responsibilities. In the house I bought, their arrogance was almost poetic. I poured myself a glass of Merlot, legs propped on a velvet ottoman, and stared out the window while the sun dipped behind the skyline. Their mortgage was falling behind. I knew that now. My real estate advisor, a sharp little woman named Delia with red nails and no patience for nonsense, had gotten me the intel in under 48 hours. "They're 3 months behind," Delia said, flipping through a folder. "And Susan Beckett? She co-signed a second mortgage last fall." I blinked. "The professor?" Delia nodded. "The very one. Thought she could impress the neighbors, I guess. Took out equity to fund some landscaping in a Lexus." I let out a laugh so bitter I surprised myself. These people, so desperate to project wealth they were quietly drowning in their own illusions. Meanwhile, the woman they dismissed as a maid had enough liquid assets to buy the entire cul-de-sac. And so I did what any calm, deeply insulted woman would do. I bought the bank debt. The paperwork was a breeze. Delia handled it all. And just like that, I didn't just own the house. They owed me. There's a certain power in patience. Something my late employer Catherine used to say echoed in my mind. "Nora, wealth whispers. Let everyone else shout," I whispered. Then I moved. The real opportunity came 2 weeks later, during a charity gala Susan was hosting for faculty wives. One of those insufferable fundraising dinners with overcooked salmon and cold risotto. Nicole insisted on tagging along to what quote, and Ethan, bless his spineless heart, trailed after her like a purse dog. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't need to be. Delia got me in. Not as a guest. No, that would have been too direct. I came in as an anonymous sponsor, underwriting half the floral arrangements under the name of my LLC MLW Properties. My initials, rearranged. Nicole spotted me near the bar, dressed head to toe in cream silk, hair pulled back the way Catherine used to wear hers when she meant business. I could see the confusion flicker behind her eyes. She approached, glass of Chardonnay in hand. "Oh, Nora? I didn't realize you'd be here." I gave her a practiced smile. Neither did I. But someone called from the foundation needing a last-minute sponsor. Couldn't say no. She nodded slowly, lips twitching. "How generous of you." I could almost see the wheels turning. Then, right on cue, Susan's niece Chloe came into view, clipboard in hand, whispering names and donations to a woman in pearls. She didn't notice me at first, but when she did, she blinked. Hard. Chloe worked in real estate, and unlike the others, she knew the name MLW Properties. She'd probably even tried to schedule a pitch meeting, not knowing I was behind the curtain. She straightened her spine, forced a smile. "Nora, we must talk. I've been hearing amazing things about your investment firm." Nicole turned toward her, surprised. "You two know each other?" Chloe hesitated. "We've crossed paths in the luxury space." That was when the event manager walked up and handed me a donation plaque. "Thank you to our premier patron, MLW Properties." Nicole's smile faltered. Susan, from across the room, narrowed her eyes. "And Ethan? Well, he just looked lost. Like someone had switched the channel in the middle of a show he didn't understand." I didn't stay long. Just long enough to be seen. Long enough for Nicole to realize the woman she thought she could shove into a retirement facility was now bankrolling half her mother's social status. The next morning, I made my move. I showed up on their doorstep, holding a manila envelope and wearing the same neutral smile I'd perfected back when I cleaned houses for the rich and insufferable. Nicole opened the door, her expression tight. "Nora, we weren't expecting you. Just stopping by." I handed her the envelope. "What's this?" I tilted my head. "Transfer notice. MLW Properties is assuming ownership of this house's lien. Just formalities. You'll start receiving communications through our office going forward." She didn't respond, just stared at the envelope like it had teeth. Ethan came to the door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" Nicole thrust the paper at him. He skimmed it, his face drained. You're our lien holder now?" I smiled faintly. "New management has other plans." Then I turned on my heel and walked back to the waiting car, heart pounding with a mix of sorrow and satisfaction. They'd thrown me away like garbage. But now? Now they had to pay rent to the woman they called a parasite. And I hadn't even gotten to the good part yet. The week after I delivered that envelope, silence hung thick in the air, like smoke before a storm. No calls, no texts, not even one of Nicole's curt little emails asking if I could contribute to the electric this month. And I knew why. They were scrambling. I imagined them pacing their marble-floored kitchen, voices low and tense. Nicole rifling through paperwork, Ethan scrolling through Reddit forums titled, "Can a lien holder evict a family?" Sweetheart, not only can she will. But not yet. First, I wanted them to stew in it, to feel the uncertainty crawl under their skin. The very same kind I'd felt sitting at their table that night, humiliated over a plate of spaghetti. Let them learn what it's like when the woman you thought was beneath you turns out to be your landlord. I spent the next few days finalizing the back-end paperwork. Delia took care of the finer points, utilities, insurance transfers, a small landscaping adjustment. "Just a signal change," she said with a wink. "Let the neighbors start talking." Meanwhile, I booked myself a spa weekend in Carmel, full seaweed wrap, salt scrub, and 3 hours of silence in a eucalyptus steam room. I was reclaiming more than real estate, I was reclaiming me. But the true payoff came 5 days later. I hadn't planned on attending the real estate showcase. I had Delia's team keeping tabs on new properties. But fate, God, karma, or maybe just good timing, drew me there. And, oh, I'm glad it did, because that's where it happened. Where Nicole's little house of cards began to fall apart. It was an open house event at the Crestwood Gardens. Upscale villas with glass walls, smart kitchens, and gated driveways that whispered money without needing to shout. Susan's niece, Chloe, was the lead agent. And as luck would have it, Nicole was there too. She stood near the free champagne table, dressed in a silky beige blouse that practically screamed, "My mother-in-law is someone else's problem." She was laughing, flipping her hair, trying to charm the regional manager. She didn't see me at first, but Chloe did. Her expression tightened the second our eyes met. She tried to play it off with a fake smile, but her eyes darted nervously to Nicole. Too late. I strolled over to the display, pretending to admire a floor plan. Nicole turned and froze. "Nora?" I looked up, all innocence. "Oh, hi, Nicole. Fancy seeing you here." She blinked, then forced a brittle smile. "Didn't realize you were shopping." I tilted my head. "You know how it is. Been thinking about an upgrade." I could see the math happening behind her eyes. The shifting of gears. The first pinprick of fear that maybe, just maybe, she didn't know who she was dealing with anymore. Chloe stepped in, clearly uncomfortable. "Nora's with MLW, right?" Nicole's eyes shot to her. "You two know each other?" Chloe hesitated. "We've crossed paths." That's when the manager walked over. "Well, Ms. Whitaker," he said, extending his hand. "Your assistant showed me your letter of intent. Always a pleasure when a serious investor comes in." Nicole's face paled. "Investor?" she echoed, just barely keeping her voice level. I smiled and shook his hand. "Yes, looking at a few multi-units. Also have a personal interest in a villa. Might split time." Then, just for the fun of it, I pulled up my banking app and flashed the screen at Chloe. 8.3 million. No words, just numbers. Nicole saw it. I know she did. Because her breath caught. Because her hand clenched around her wine glass like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. And Chloe, well, she nearly dropped her tablet. The manager beamed. "We'll expedite the process. VIP status, of course." Nicole tried to recover, laughed a little too loud. Didn't know housekeepers made that kind of money. I turned to her, smile razor thin. "Oh, I don't clean houses anymore. I buy them." Then I walked away, just like that. Let her chew on that for a while. Because the next morning, Susan received her own letter. A legal notice from MLW Properties. The lien was being enforced. The home was now in default. Arrangements should be made for departure within 30 days, unless a formal lease agreement was negotiated and paid up front. I heard she nearly fainted. Later that day, I stopped by. Not for drama, not for gloating, just to witness. They didn't even open the door at first, but I could hear the argument through the window. Ethan's voice, panicked. "You told me it was fine, that no one would notice." Nicole, shrill and shaking. "I didn't think she'd turn into some real estate godmother overnight." I rang again. This time, Ethan answered. He looked older, smaller, like life had pressed a thumb down on him and left him crumpled. "Nora?" he breathed. "Please?" I didn't step inside. I didn't smile. "I suggest you start packing," I said softly. "The next time the doorbell rings, it won't be me." And then I walked back to the car. Leather seats, engine purring. My driver, a quiet young man named Luis, opened the door like I was royalty. I didn't look back. Let them stand there in their chaos. Let them feel what it's like to lose comfort, to be unsure, to question what's next. Because this was only the beginning. The next few days were quiet, but not in the peaceful kind of way. It was that pressurized silence that comes right before a glass shatters. Ethan called me 5 times. I didn't answer once. Nicole tried texting, just a simple, "Can we talk?" I ignored that too, because I knew what was coming. I didn't need apologies. I didn't want another hollow dinner invitation. I wanted truth. I wanted to see them face it. And I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the notice hit their mailbox, Ethan showed up at the Fairmont. Now mind you, I hadn't told him where I was staying, but he must have done what desperate people do when they run out of options. Begged someone for a lead. Maybe Mr. Langston. Maybe Delia. Maybe he called every high-end hotel in the city until he got lucky. Either way, when the knock came on my suite door, I already knew who it was. I opened it slowly. There he stood, Ethan Adams, 31 years old, in a wrinkled dress shirt and last year's loafers. No tie, no confidence, just shame in his eyes and a bouquet of flowers so limp they looked like they were picked from the back of a gas station. "Mom," he said. I didn't answer. I simply stepped aside. He walked in like a boy sent to the principal's office. Slowly, carefully. The suite was spotless, soft jazz playing low, sun filtering in through the wide windows. My wine glass from the afternoon sat half full on the end table, next to the legal documents I'd been reviewing for a separate property purchase. "You look different," he said, like the words had betrayed him. I didn't smile. "Because I'm not tired anymore." He sat on the edge of the couch, still clutching the flowers. I didn't take them. There was a long pause. Then he whispered, "Please, don't evict us." I tilted my head. "You mean from the house I bought you?" His face crumpled. I didn't know. I didn't know how things had gotten so bad. We thought you'd always be there, helping with the bills. We were just trying to plan for the baby. That lie again. The invisible child they'd used like a coupon. There is no baby, Ethan, I said calmly. You and Nicole have been playing pretend for months, and you were counting on me to keep pretending with you. He didn't deny it. He just sat there, wilted. You called me a parasite, I said, my voice suddenly sharper than I intended. I didn't mean it, he whispered, looking up. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And worse, you believed them. Silence. I walked toward the window, took a breath, then turned back. You know what hurts more than anything? I said, my voice low and steady. That after 30 years, after wiping your tears and paying your tuition and sacrificing everything so you could stand on your own 2 feet, you still saw me as baggage the second I needed rest. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out, so I kept going. You didn't just fail me, Ethan. You failed yourself. Because now, you've shown me exactly who you are when comfort is threatened. And I'll tell you what I saw. A man who panics, who sells out his own mother to impress a woman who can't boil an egg without rolling her eyes. A man who calls himself a provider, while secretly Ethan didn't cry at first. He just sat there, slack-jawed, holding that wilted bouquet, like it might somehow shield him. But when I told him, calm as ever, that I'd already scheduled the moving company, the tears came fast. You can't do this, he said, voice cracking. You're my mother. That word, mother. The same title he'd thrown around like a leash when it suited him, and cut loose the second I stopped being useful. I was your mother when I cleaned your vomit off the carpet at 3 a.m., I said. When I picked up your prescriptions. When I sold my jewelry to pay your student loans. I leaned in, my voice softening, but not with pity. You're the one who stopped being a son, Ethan. The moment you called me dead weight. His shoulders shook. He buried his face in his hands. I didn't mean it, he mumbled. Nicole was pressuring me. She kept saying we needed the house in our name. She thought it would make her mother respect us. That made me pause. Because it was true. Susan Beckett, Ph.D., had never seen me as anything more than a dust rag with a pulse. Nicole? Just a younger version in training. And Ethan, my Ethan, had been clawing at their approval for years. I'd seen it even before the wedding. The pressed shirts, the fake bravado, the way he'd mimicked their vocabulary until he sounded like a walking resume instead of a person. I know you wanted to be respected, I said gently. But you chased their validation so hard, you forgot the one person who never needed you to impress her. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. I miss you, Mom. I didn't reply. Because here's the thing about grief. It doesn't always follow a funeral. Sometimes it walks into your hotel suite wearing your son's face. And even then, you don't get closure. Just a hollow echo where love used to live. He stood to leave, holding the untouched bouquet. Just before he reached the door, I spoke. I'm not doing this to punish you. He turned, confused. I'm doing it to set you free. Free? He said bitterly. From what? From the lie you've been living, I said. And from the illusion that there'll always be someone waiting behind you to catch your fall. He left without another word, and I stood there, heart aching, but not breaking, because the difference now? I could hurt and still protect myself. That Friday, the movers showed up at 9 a.m. sharp. Nicole opened the door in a silk robe and sunglasses, as if hiding from the consequences. Is this a joke? She snapped at the lead mover. He handed her the paperwork without a blink. We were hired by MLW Properties. Everything's prepaid. You have 4 hours. I arrived just before noon, parked across the street, windows down, breeze running through my hair. Watched from behind sunglasses as they carried out box after box. One of the movers was whistling, something upbeat. A jazz tune. Fitting, really. Nicole spotted me eventually. She stormed across the lawn like a woman possessed. You witch, she hissed. You manipulative old witch. How could you do this to your own son? I rolled up my window halfway, smiled. You did it to yourself, sweetheart. She tried again. You think this makes you powerful? It makes you pathetic, petty, alone. I turned to her slowly, calm, even. Being born into comfort isn't the same as building it. And no, Nicole, I'm not alone. She laughed bitterly. Oh, please. You've got no one. Not a friend in the world. But she was wrong. Because just then, Delia's car pulled up behind mine. She stepped out, all poise and perfect posture, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Adams," she called over sweetly, "just need your signature for the final lot transfer. The one adjacent to the house." Nicole blinked. "Adjacent?" Delia smiled. "Yes. She bought the 2 neighboring lots last week. They'll be landscaped into gardens. Private gardens." Nicole's face fell. "You're surrounding the house, claiming what's mine," I replied, "and keeping out the rot." She sputtered. "This isn't over. You're going to regret this." "No, Nicole. You are." And I turned away. The final box was loaded. The truck pulled off, dust in its wake. The house, my house, stood empty, clean, free, and for the first time in years, so did I. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was anxious. No. Those days were behind me. It was quiet. Real quiet. The kind of quiet that settles into your bones and makes you realize how much noise you'd been living with all along. The biting words, the cold shoulders, the tension in your own home. Now, there was only stillness, and the sound of wind brushing tree branches outside my window. My window. I walked barefoot through the house just after midnight. No lights, just moonlight, catching the edges of old picture frames and casting shadows across the kitchen floor. I ran my hand along the banister Ethan used to slide down as a boy, touched the dented cabinet corner I'd once bumped into while carrying his science project. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it. The grief, the truth, that the boy I raised was gone. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I had to let go of the version of him I'd clung to. The sweet boy who used to run into my arms after school? Gone. Replaced by a man who sold out his own mother for status points. And as much as that shattered me, it also set me free. The next morning, I brewed a full pot of coffee, poured it into a silver thermos, and drove 25 minutes to a small brick building on the east end of town. Catherine's old estate lawyer, Mr. Langston, was already waiting with a stack of folders. He handed me a clean manila one. "You sure about this?" he asked, looking over the top of his glasses. I nodded. Inside were the final documents to create the Nora Adams Fund for Women Reclaiming Their Lives. A scholarship trust, seeded with $2 million, reserved specifically for single mothers over 40 who'd been discarded, underestimated, or pushed out. "Let them call me a parasite," I said. "I'll be the kind that grows into a garden." Langston chuckled. "You know, most people who inherit this kind of money, they buy yachts or art. You bought a foreclosure, a block of condos, and now a cause." "I didn't grow up with money," I said, "but I've always had purpose." That was the difference. Nicole could post selfies and rehearse her cocktail party smirks all day long, but I'd built something real, something that would last beyond my own bitterness. Because what was revenge, really, if it didn't birth something better? Later that afternoon, I moved out of the hotel and into my new condo. Not the old house. I left that vacant for now. Let it breathe. Let it remember it belonged to someone who respected it. The condo was sleek, clean lines, warm oak floors, big windows, a modest balcony overlooking a patch of wild jasmine. I unpacked 2 boxes, made myself a cup of mint tea, and stood barefoot watching the sunset paint the sky. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled, like I'd finally stopped running towards someone else's version of worthy. I hired a part-time caregiver. Her name was Rosa, 42, 2 teenage boys at home. She came twice a week, helped me with errands, handled a few things around the house. On her 3rd visit, I handed her an envelope. She looked confused. "It's for your boys," I said. "Their first college savings deposit." From one mom to another. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to protest. I held up a hand. "No debt. No shame. Just pass it on when you can." A week later, Ethan emailed me. It wasn't long. Subject: "I was wrong. Bodhi. I see it now. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. But I saved it. Maybe one day I'd read it again. Maybe not. But the apology wasn't the point. He said it. He finally said it. And in that one moment, I knew. I hadn't just taken back my life. I'd rebuilt it. I wasn't keeping tabs on Nicole. Not intentionally, anyway. But when a woman like that starts falling, word travels fast, especially among the kind of people who once orbited her like moths around a porch light. Turns out she hadn't landed softly. 3 weeks after the eviction, a former coworker of mine sent a message. "Is this your daughter-in-law doing webinars on budgeting?" Attached was a link. Sure enough, there she was, Nicole Adams, framed in soft lighting, speaking into a ring light from what looked suspiciously like the back corner of a one-bedroom rental. "Welcome, everyone," she chirped. "Today we're talking about how to live well on less, because luxury isn't about labels, it's about choices." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my tea. This was a woman who once demanded monogrammed cocktail napkins for a backyard baby shower, before there was ever a baby. And now she was preaching minimalism to strangers on Zoom. Oh, how the mighty rebrand. She was trying to stay afloat. I could see it. The carefully styled bookshelf behind her. The secondhand blazer pretending to be designer. Even the way she spoke. Slower, more self-aware. Like someone trying on humility for the first time and not quite sure if it fit. But the cracks showed. During one live stream, someone in the chat asked, "How did you get into financial coaching?" Nicole hesitated, blinked. "My husband and I went through some setbacks," she said carefully. "We lost our home due to unforeseen legal restructuring." That was one way to put it. I didn't judge her for trying to rebuild. Not really. But what struck me, what stayed with me, was how quickly her followers fell for the new act. Some even praised her for being resilient. One called her an inspiration. And I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't angry anymore. Because watching Nicole scramble to reinvent herself didn't give me satisfaction. Watching her actually try, to become a different woman, that gave me peace. Don't get me wrong, she still had sharp edges. A month later, I ran into Susan, her mother, at the city library of all places. I was checking out a stack of memoirs. Susan was hosting a book, Talk About Generational Trauma. The irony nearly knocked me over. We locked eyes across the room. She gave me a brittle smile and walked over. "I see you're doing well," she said, eyeing my linen blazer and suede purse like she expected to find a smudge. "I am," I replied. "Your daughter seems to be doing okay too. Budgeting webinars and all." Her lips twitched. "She's managing. But it's been difficult." I nodded. "Consequences usually are." She frowned. "I'm not sure I understand the point of all this, Nora. Evictions, shell companies, public humiliation. Was it all about revenge?" I studied her face, the perfectly lined eyes, the smug little upturn of her mouth. "No," I said slowly. "It was about reminding people like you that women like me, maids, mothers, middle-aged nobodies, we see everything. We remember everything. And we are not disposable." For once, she didn't have a comeback. She just turned, heels clicking against the tile, and walked away. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the balcony. The jasmine was blooming now, soft white petals drifting like confetti in the wind. I thought about everything I'd built, everything I'd lost. Goofy, my old dog, gone now. Ethan, still a work in progress. Nicole, off hustling coaching packages to strangers online. Susan, probably filing a complaint about the library's seating. And me, I was whole. For the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving for anyone else. I was living for me. The next morning, I wrote a letter, handwritten, blue ink on crisp paper. "Dear Goofy, you would have loved this place. The floors are warm and the sunlight hits just right in the mornings. I still miss your wet nose on my leg. I think you knew it before I did, that I had to leave, that it was time. I hope you're running free now, and if souls like yours can check in on us, thank you. For staying with me all those years, for keeping me company when no one else would. You were my first act of unconditional love. The next chapters? They're for me. Love, Nora." I folded it neatly and tucked it into the jasmine bush. Some goodbyes don't need witnesses. The knock came just before dusk. Not a buzz, not the sharp rap of a delivery driver. This was gentler, hesitant. I stood still in my kitchen, hand hovering over a pot of simmering lentils. Something about the rhythm. 3 knocks, then silence, pulled at me, like a memory trying to surface. When I opened the door, Ethan was standing there. But not the Ethan I'd last seen, hunched in guilt, clutching a grocery store bouquet. This Ethan looked older. He wasn't wearing some tailored shirt Nicole had ironed, just a plain gray sweater, wrinkled khakis. His hair was longer, slightly curled at the ends, like he hadn't had time or reason to tidy up. "Hi, Mom." I didn't say anything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Not thick, not formal, just a piece of printer paper, soft from being handled too much. "I wrote it down this time," he said, voice quiet, "so I wouldn't mess it up." He held it out. I didn't take it. Not yet. "I know I don't deserve to be standing here," he continued, "but I needed you to see that I know what I did. I needed to say it without begging for anything in return." That's when I saw the difference. He wasn't here to win me back. He was here to own what he broke. I took the envelope. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. He looked surprised. "Only if that's really okay." I nodded, stepping aside. Soup still hot. We sat at the small round table by the window, 2 bowls between us. The silence wasn't awkward. It was necessary. Sacred, even. Like we were letting the space breathe for the first time. He didn't touch the soup right away. "I got a job," he said finally. "IT support. Nothing glamorous. But I'm showing up every day." I nodded. Nicole and I separated. For good this time. I nodded again. She said I changed. Said I'm no fun anymore. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. I think she meant I stopped covering for her lies. I kept eating. "I'm in therapy now," he added. That made me pause. I looked up. His eyes didn't dart or flinch. He met my gaze square on. And I saw it. The boy I'd raised, buried under years of pride and pressure, was still in there. Smaller, bruised, but still fighting. When we finished our bowls, he stood. "I don't expect anything," he said, hands in his pockets. "I just wanted you to know I'm trying." I walked him to the door, and just before he stepped out, I touched his shoulder. "Trying's a start." His eyes brimmed with something raw. He nodded once, then walked into the night. Later, I sat down on the couch, unfolded his letter, and read every word. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. I hadn't stepped foot in the old house since the day I watched Nicole's moving truck vanish down the street. But 3 weeks later, I drove back. No ceremony, no clipboard, just me, a ring of keys, and a bundle of lilacs I picked up from the farmer's market. The house sat like a question mark on the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Lawn overgrown, porch dusty, but still solid. Waiting. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air had that soft, musty stillness that clings to a place left alone too long. I opened a few windows, let the breeze roll through. Sunlight sliced across the hardwood like gold ribbon. My steps echoed through the silence. I walked through each room, running my fingers along the banisters, the window frames, the edge of the kitchen counter, where Goofy used to stretch and beg for toast crusts. I expected to feel grief, but what came over me wasn't sadness. It was clarity. This house had been misused, not by strangers, but by the very people I'd trusted to make it a home. And now, it was time to choose differently. 3 days later, I had it cleaned from attic to crawl space, deep scrubbed, repainted in soft whites and warm creams. The kind of clean that feels like absolution. Then I placed a call to a woman named Nadia. We'd met briefly during one of Delia's community outreach events. Nadia was a widow with 2 girls, ages 9 and 12, and an eviction notice pinned to her refrigerator. She hadn't asked for help. She hadn't begged. She'd simply said, "I just want a safe place to raise my girls and sleep without checking the locks 4 times. That stuck with me. So when she picked up the phone and I said, "The house is yours, rent-free for the first year," she didn't answer right away. I could hear her crying on the other end. All she managed was, "Why me?" And I told her the truth. Because someone once gave me dignity when no one else did. Now I'm returning the favor. The day they moved in, I didn't stick around. Just left a welcome basket on the porch, blankets, pantry staples, fresh bread, and a handwritten note tucked into a library book. This house was misused by people who didn't understand what it meant to build something. Now it's yours to fill with laughter and late-night stories and the sound of bare feet on hardwood. All I ask is that you live fully, and that you never shrink for anyone. Nora, I drove away with the windows down, wind in my hair, sun warm on my chest, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a woman escaping something. I felt like a woman returning to herself, to her purpose, to a kind of freedom you can't buy, but you sure as hell can build. That evening, Rosa, my part-time caregiver, brought over empanadas and told me her oldest boy just got accepted into a science magnet program. We wouldn't have managed without the scholarship, she said, her eyes shining. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're building something, I said. That matters more than they'll ever teach in school. And I meant it. Because legacies aren't made of granite countertops or stock portfolios. They're made of moments like this. Empanadas on a quiet evening. A key in the right hand. A roof over the right head. To be continued. Part 9 is up next, darling. And wouldn't you know it? Susan Beckett's name is about to be dragged where she never imagined. The public record. Ready when you are. Вы сказали. Next ChatGPT сказал. Approximately equals 1,180 words. Recap. Nora gave her old home to a widow and her daughters, rent-free, choosing generosity over vengeance. In doing so, she rewrote her story. But not everyone was ready to close the book. If peace was a pie, I was finally getting my slice. Quiet mornings. A fresh routine. New books stacked on the coffee table. Rosa humming while she swept. Jasmine blooming along my railing like it was trying to tell me something. You did good. You can rest now. But peace has a way of attracting mess, especially the kind wrapped in pearls and tenure. I was halfway through a memoir and a plate of toast when Delia called. You might want to sit down, she said. Already am, I replied, buttering another triangle. Well, she sighed. Susan Beckett just made the front page of the Register. I blinked. What for? Delia paused, letting the weight of it hang before dropping the hammer. Fraud. Real estate misrepresentation. Something about a forged lien release and a shady loan on a property she didn't own. I set down my toast. What property? The one you reclaimed. I leaned back slowly. Let it all click into place. Turns out, right before the eviction, Susan had quietly taken out a second mortgage using falsified paperwork. Lied on the forms. Claimed Nicole and Ethan had full title without dispute. She likely thought I'd never dig up the original lien clause, the one that gave me claim from day one. But I did. And once my lawyers connected the dots, the rest fell like dominoes. The bank pressed charges. The university launched an ethics investigation. And just like that, the Beckett name, which once rang like crystal at every fundraiser in town, started sounding more like a bad punchline. 3 days later, I ran into Susan outside the co-op. She was in flats. No heels, no pearls. Just a strained smile and bags under her eyes. She spotted me in the produce aisle. Could have turned around. Could have vanished into the frozen peas. But no. She came right up to me, clutching a bruised avocado. Nora, she said, voice tight. I assume you've seen the articles. I smiled politely. Just this morning, front and center. She tried to hold my gaze, but the veneer cracked fast. This is all a misunderstanding, she stammered. I was trying to help them stay in the home. Nicole and Ethan were under so much pressure. I raised a brow. So you lied to the bank? She flinched. I was misinformed. No, I said. You were entitled. There's a difference. Her lips trembled. You don't know what it's like to fall from grace. I looked her dead in the eye. Don't I? She went silent. I cleaned houses for 30 years. I've eaten expired soup and worn shoes with holes. I know exactly what falling feels like. The difference is, when I hit bottom, I didn't drag anyone else down with me. That stunned her into stillness. So I added one more thing, just for the record. I didn't set out to ruin you, Susan. You did that all on your own. And I walked away, leaving her there in the produce section, still clutching that bruised avocado like it owed her an apology. Later that week, I sent Delia a thank you basket, chocolates, fancy soaps, and a handwritten card for handling the paperwork that exposed an empire built on mirrors. She called me laughing. You sure know how to package poetic justice. Maybe I did. Or maybe I was just finally speaking the language I'd been forced to learn in silence for far too long. Because here's what no one tells you about being underestimated. Once you stop waiting for recognition, you start building things they can't tear down. And Susan Beckett? She built her world on borrowed clout. I built mine on quiet endurance. And I'd take that trade any day of the week. The invitation came on cream cardstock. No return address. Just a gold foil crest. And the words, Women's Legacy Luncheon, honoring unsung community builders. I almost laughed. 10 years ago, a room like that wouldn't have let me pass the coat check. I was the help. The woman in the background, making things sparkle while others clinked glasses and toasted to resilience. Now, they wanted me center stage. Delia's assistant had nominated me without telling me, said I embodied the kind of quiet strength no one talks about. I cried when I read that. Not because I needed the recognition, but because someone finally saw the truth of it all. The years, the silence, the swallowed pride. I said yes, not to show off, to show up. I wore a navy blue dress with clean lines and pearl earrings. Catherine once gifted me, the kind that never go out of style. Rosa came over to do my hair, humming the whole time like it was a celebration. You nervous? She asked, brushing a loose curl behind my ear. I looked at myself in the mirror. No, I said. I've already lived the hard part. The event was held in a glass ballroom overlooking the bay. Tables draped in ivory linen. Centerpieces made of hydrangeas and lilies. Servers moved like choreography. And at the front, a podium waited with my name on a place card. I sat between a retired judge and a woman who'd started a nonprofit for veterans. When the MC finally said my name, something strange happened. The whole room stood up. Not just polite applause, a standing ovation. I didn't even get to the podium before tears welled in my eyes. Not because I needed validation, but because, for once, I wasn't being thanked for scrubbing floors or pitching in. I was being seen. I told them the truth in my speech. About sacrifice. About being invisible. About how wealth isn't always what you bank. It's what you withstand. I spent most of my life being spoken over, I said. Then I realized the best revenge isn't a louder voice. It's making sure your life speaks for itself. The crowd was quiet. And then, they roared. After the luncheon, a young woman approached me, maybe mid-20s, clipboard in hand, eyes wide. I'm organizing a speaker series, she said. Would you ever consider telling your story? To students? To women rebuilding their lives? I paused, then smiled. I think it's time. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing backstage at the downtown library auditorium. Lights dimmed, microphones humming softly. The faint murmur of an audience settling into their seats. I pressed my palms together to steady the little quake in my hands. Funny, isn't it? I could scrub someone else's toilet, nurse a sick child through the night, sleep on a couch for a month without flinching, but stand in front of 200 strangers? My knees went weak. Then I felt it. The memory of Goofy's nose nudging my hand after every long day. The smell of Catherine's lavender scarves when she hugged me. The sound of my own heartbeat steadying after each setback, whispering, "Keep going." And just like that, the fear dissolved. The moderator called my name, and I stepped into the light. The applause was warm, real. I took a breath and began. I'm not a politician. I'm not a business mogul. I didn't start a company or invent an app. A few chuckles. I'm a woman who spent 30 years serving other people, quietly, invisibly. And for a long time, I thought that was all I'd ever be. I paused. But invisible doesn't mean powerless. Heads nodded. A ripple of energy moved through the room. I told them about Ethan, about the house, about being called a burden, a parasite. I didn't sugarcoat it. I let the words land like stones dropped in a still pond. But here's the thing about sacrifice, I said. If you're not careful, it turns into permission. Permission for others to take and take, until you're nothing but a memory of the woman you once were. Silence, thick, charged. And when that happens, you have two choices: shrivel or rebuild. I smiled then, slow and sure. I chose to rebuild. After the talk, they lined up. Women of every age. Some clutched notebooks. Others just wanted a hug. One woman, maybe my age, squeezed my hand so hard I thought she might never let go. My daughter called me a burden too, she whispered. I thought I was crazy for hurting so much. You're not crazy, I told her. You're a mother. And just like that, the dam broke. Her tears soaked my shoulder as she wept. Not from weakness, but from relief. She wasn't alone. None of us were. We'd just been convinced we were. Later that night, I sat in my little condo with a steaming mug of chamomile tea and a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. Rosa had left a note on the counter. You're not invisible anymore. You're inevitable. I smiled, because maybe that's the truth of it. The people who survive everything, the ones who love without applause, endure without witnesses, rebuild without headlines, we're not just survivors, we're inevitable. Next Thursday came the letter, no return address. Just my name written in a careful, familiar script. I knew who it was from the second I saw the handwriting. Nicole. I stood by the window for a long while before opening it. The sky was the color of old dishwater, heavy with spring rain that hadn't fallen yet. The kind of stillness that comes before something breaks. The envelope was thick. Inside, a folded page and a single photograph. I sat down slowly. The chair creaked beneath me, as if bracing itself. Nora, there's no way to start this without sounding too late. But that's what this is. Too late. I've rewritten this letter 4 times. I threw away 3 versions. In the first, I blamed stress. In the second, I blamed Susan. In the third, I blamed you. But none of that's true. I did what I did because I could. Because you made it easy to take and take. You were the safest target I ever had. And for that, I am so sorry. I stopped reading for a moment. My eyes had blurred, but not from tears. It was something else. Recognition. The words didn't change what happened, but they mattered. Nicole had always been sharp-tongued and slippery. Now she was just human. I kept reading. Ethan told me about the scholarship fund, about the house you gave to that widow, about your speech at the library. I watched a clip online. I didn't recognize you at first. You looked taller. That made me laugh. A real one. Quiet and sudden. It felt good to laugh over her again, instead of because of her. My parents won't speak to me now. Susan is blaming everyone but herself. The scandal forced her into early retirement. She spends her days posting book reviews no one reads and drinking boxed wine. Ethan and we were broken long before the eviction. But you knew that, didn't you? You saw the cracks. We were too proud to admit them. The last paragraph was shorter, slower, like she'd run out of excuses to hide behind. I've started teaching art classes at a community center. Nothing fancy, just paint and paper and women trying not to fall apart. Sometimes I tell them about you. About the woman who bought back her life and never looked back. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know, I hear you now, and I'm sorry I ever tried to quiet your voice. Nicole tucked behind the letter was the photo. It was from years ago. Thanksgiving, maybe. Ethan was carving the turkey. Nicole had flour on her nose, and I was caught mid-laugh. That was before the judgment, before the mortgages and whispered insults, before I became their cautionary tale. Back when I believed love would always be enough, I placed the photo face down. Then I folded the letter, tucked it inside my keepsake box, and locked it away. Not out of bitterness, but because I had what I needed, an ending. Ethan called that Friday. He didn't ask for anything, just said, would you meet me at the park? Same bench as before. The before was when Nicole had just moved out, and he still believed life could rewind if he apologized hard enough. That time, I didn't stay long. I couldn't. My heart hadn't scarred over yet. But now, I had the scar, and I had a choice. So I said yes. The park was quiet. Just a few families drifting by with strollers and dogs. The air was cool. Early evening, kinda cool, when the sun lingers but the shadows start stretching long. Ethan was already there when I arrived. Same slouch, same anxious knee bounce. But his shoulders didn't look as weighed down. Not quite. Hey, he said, standing. Sit, I told him. Let's not make this dramatic. He gave a short laugh. Right. We sat side by side, not touching, not tense, just there. He glanced over. Nicole wrote you, didn't she? I nodded. She meant it, he said. She's different now. I hope so, I replied. That's her journey. He looked down at his hands. Do you think I could ever earn your trust again? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the question settle. Let him sit with it. Then I said, trust isn't a light switch, Ethan. It's a trail, one you walk, step by step, until it leads you back. He nodded slowly. That's fair. We sat for a while after that, watched a little boy chase bubbles while his father laughed behind him. Ethan cleared his throat. I've been saving up. I want to pay you back. I turned to him. For what? For the down payment. For the years. For everything. I shook my head. Ethan, I never gave you that money to be repaid. I gave it because I loved you. His eyes welled up. But love isn't a blank check, I added. And it sure as hell isn't permission to hurt someone and call it duty. He nodded, wiping his cheek with his sleeve. I know that now. We sat in silence again. But it wasn't heavy. It was honest, like a window cracked open after a long, stale winter. Finally, I said, you want to rebuild trust? Yes. Then start by living with integrity. Not to win me back, but to become the man you should have been all along. He looked at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. I will, he said. Even if you never let me back in, I still will. That was enough. I stood, brushed the bench dust from my coat. I'll see you around, Ethan. His voice cracked. You will, I smiled softly. If you keep walking that trail, yeah, I think I will. There's a kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. It just rests. That's what my mornings became. No tiptoeing around tension. No watching my words to avoid setting off someone else's ego. Just the kettle whistling, birds squabbling over crumbs outside the window, and me, pouring my first cup of tea with a steady hand. I never imagined 58 would feel like a beginning. But here I was, breathing easy. The condo was humming with new energy. Rosa and I had started calling it the Little Lighthouse because women kept showing up. Neighbors, scholarship recipients, even strangers who'd seen my talk online. They came with questions, fears, small dreams they were scared to speak aloud. And I listened. That was the magic. Not advice, just presence. One day, I walked into the spare bedroom and stared at the sewing machine Catherine had left me, still tucked beneath a faded floral cover, like it had been waiting for a second act. I ran my hand over the top. Remembered how she used to stitch during thunderstorms, said the rhythm calmed her nerves. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just done surviving. I was ready to create. The next month moved slow in the best way. I started making blankets, small at first, nothing fancy, just fabric stitched with care. I dropped one off at Nadia's doorstep, tied with a little card, to keep the warmth in. She texted me that night. The girls are already fighting over it. Thank you. I made another, then another. Word spread. Soon, I was getting requests. Could I do one for a baby shower? A retirement? A chemo patient? Each one felt like a stitch in something bigger than a quilt, bigger than even me. A new identity. Nora Adams, the woman who gives on her own terms now. One crisp morning, I walked past the community center and saw Ethan inside, seated in a plastic chair, fixing the Wi-Fi router while a kid with jelly-stained hands clung to his knee. He didn't see me. I just stood there a moment, watching. He wasn't performing. He was showing up. And that meant more than any speech or gift ever could. Later that week, I pulled a card from the mailbox. No envelope. Just a note, scrawled in pencil. Ms. Adams? Thanks for the blanket. And for not giving up on people like my mom. You made our home feel like home again. Lila, age 12. I pressed it to my chest, eyes stinging. Not from sorrow, from fullness. That night, I sat on the balcony, jasmine twining around the railing, moonlight pooling on the floor like spilled milk. I sipped my tea and whispered to the sky, I think I'm happy. And for once, it didn't feel like tempting fate. That last bloom of spring, pushing up the railing like it had somewhere to be. It wrapped around the metal with no shame, no hesitation. just bold, stubborn grace. I sat on the balcony, watching it climb, and thought, this is what healing looks like. Not fireworks, not confetti, just something stubborn and alive saying, I'm still here. I kept the house empty, not because I couldn't sell it. Lord knows Delia reminded me of the offers piling up, but because something in me needed that space to breathe. It wasn't just wood and walls, it was a chapter. And sometimes, a chapter doesn't need a sequel, it just needs time. I walked through the house one last time before handing over the keys to Nadia permanently. She'd cried when I told her, said no one had ever believed in her like that. I don't need rent, I said. I need that laughter I hear when I walk by. I need to know this place finally got the family it deserved. She hugged me so tight my knees buckled. That was the real return on my investment. Back home, I lit a lavender candle and pulled out my journal, the one Catherine had gifted me the year before she passed. I flipped to the last page, wrote slowly. I gave them everything. And it still wasn't enough. So now, I give myself the life I never asked permission for. Then I closed the book. Not because the story ended, but because it was mine now. Every page, every line. Weeks passed like petals falling. Soft, easy. Ethan stopped by sometimes. Always unannounced, but never unwelcome. One Sunday, he brought a tray of lemon bars. Made them myself, he said proudly. Didn't burn the kitchen. I laughed and poured 2 glasses of iced tea. We didn't rehash the past anymore. We just let each other be. And that, I realized, was better than any apology. Nicole never contacted me again. I didn't expect her to. But one day, Rosa brought over a flyer from the community board. Thought you'd want to see this, she said. It was for an art exhibit downtown. Second Chances in Soft Light. A collection of work from women reclaiming their stories. At the bottom, a name, curated by Nicole Beckett Adams. I didn't go, but I smiled. Let her be seen for something new. Let her work. Let her grow. Forgiveness doesn't always need an audience. The scholarship fund grew. So did the circle of women who stopped seeing themselves as burdens. They sent me thank you notes, invitations, photos of graduation caps and newborn babies wrapped in my blankets. I kept them in a little wooden box labeled proof that I mattered, that I made something, and not just in spite of being dismissed, because of it. The day finally came when I stood on my front steps, alone, sun on my shoulders, air smelling like jasmine and rain and baked earth. No noise, no begging, no apology waiting to be given or received, just stillness. And in that stillness, a question, one I had never asked myself before. A voice in my head, warm and clear. What would you have done if your own child called you a parasite? Would you scream? Would you fold? Would you forgive? Or would you, like me, sit quietly and buy the house they live in?